Okay.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our last part of our restaurant hospitality series. Today, we will be joined by Mr. Chris Tripoli, who has over 40 years of service in the hospitality industry as a designer, developer, owner, and operator. For those of y'all that are not familiar with Texas State SBDC, what we do is we provide comprehensive training and business-related advising to small business owners and entrepreneurs. The advising services that we provide are at no cost due to state, federal, and local tax dollars that have prepaid for our services. Therefore, if you are not a SBDC client, I highly recommend that you sign up for one. For those outside of our 12 county coverage area, which spans from Georgetown, Round Rock, Austin, all the way down to San Marcos, just drop me an email or put something in the chat box and let me know your email, and then I'll reach out to you so we can get you connected with the closest SBDC in your area. Since it is a small group, typically Chris will kind of go through his portion and then we'll do a Q&A at the end of it. If there are any slides or handouts, those will definitely be emailed to you afterwards along with Chris's contact information. And with that, I'll let you take it away, Chris.
Thank you so much. And thanks again to you and to Texas State SBDC for putting together this education series. I mean, I've truly enjoyed joining with a group, discussing key points, marketing, menuing, finance, etc. I'm glad that you chose to record them so that in the future, anybody who's listening now can share in these comments later, or you can use them as you need. I just think it's wonderful that people use the SBDC a little bit more. So as was earlier pointed out, for those of you who maybe might have comments on what we said in any of the previous series or what we're talking about today, reach out to your advisor. You can go through them in greater detail, and they're there to help you as you want to operate better and grow your business. Now, having said that, today we're going to be spending time on a really fun topic. We're going to talk about best practices in managing your menu. The menu is something that, regardless of type of restaurant concept, we have things in common. So if you're an operator that has a limited menu and it's hung on the wall and it's counter service, or if you are a chef-driven concept and you're changing your menu seasonally, or you're formal dining or whatnot, the one thing that we have in common is that from a customer point of view, they look at your menu as a lot more than simply a list of items that they got to choose from to order. To describe what it is, your style of cooking, and how much am I going to be paying. It's a lot more than information. It's the heart of your concept. To the concept, the menu is what connects you and your concept to the consumer sitting at your table. It tells the story. When someone reads through the menu, they should walk away with a feeling of who you are, why you're doing what you're doing. They should feel the passion and the style of cooking by reading the descriptions of the food. And there should be a little story about the mission and purpose of the restaurant. The next point about the menu, again, from a customer point of view, is that it also sets the tone of your service. If I'm reading on the menu and I can see that this is tableside preparation or chef preparation, or it's seasonal and menu planning, I realize that there's going to be steps to the service. It's going to take a little bit more time. This is a full service restaurant. However, in some situations, if you develop a menu that cross utilizes product a lot and it's counter service, I realize that you're setting the tone for good value, reasonable price, service is quick, self-service, you're probably in and out of the whole experience in 30 minutes, maybe a little bit more. And then finally, the last point about menu that, again, we all have in common is that if the menu is laid out correctly, if the menu is described and priced correctly, it's what's responsible for creating your revenue. Your menu is what drives, obviously, the sales that go into the POS machine at the end of the day. And if we do this correctly, and if we price it correctly, it's also responsible for gaining more percentage points in your profit. So it's a little bit more important, obviously, than just, I got to tell the customers what they're ordering today and what's available. So to start our discussion on menuing and how the menu practice has probably been impacted greatly by COVID-19, I think it's important to note that right now you're menuing to 3 different customers. We've got what we might call the active guest, the people that are coming back. They've been dining in. They were out and about maybe They were respectful of social distancing and eating in your restaurant, even though you only had 25 to 50% occupancy available. Tables spread out, bar stools 6 feet apart, et cetera. Wearing masks going in and out. It was a sort of a loyal following. It was a habit of theirs, and they were ready. So they've been ready. And now, of course, it's just easier for the active guest to come back, be strong, dine in more regularly. They were motivated to return. They're fiercely loyal. However, the second guest is the one that is what we might consider more cautious. They were used to doing the curbside pickup. They still enjoyed, over this past 12-month period, dining out, but they dined out differently. They dined out because they got third-party delivery. They did the limited menu that you may have had available for to-go pickup or for curbside. They got used to this. Their driving force was things like safety and convenience. And so we have to remember that's part of the crowd that we're still menuing to. And then the third group, thankfully, this is gaining to be a smaller and smaller group as we're getting a little bit more used to reconfirming our old ways, getting out and about more, seeing confidence in the community, more people being vaccinated, et cetera. So there's fewer of these, but I would call them the hesitant guests, the unready. That's the guests that, although they really like restaurants, they've gotten used to missing the restaurants. They need to become confident again. We need to basically menu and promote our menu to them in a manner that can regain their confidence to come out. COVID-19 has been a challenge to the menu. It's created new and unique ways for us to serve our guests. And some of you have probably already pivoted very well, and you reacted to do the best you could with limitations of the menu. If you did, you probably followed these 4 steps that we're going to be discussing in this program. Step 1 is using your menu to define the concept. By listing the items that are available, you're defining the basic components of your concept. For many restaurants that have been here a long time, this defining is really more of a reconfirming what your brand is to mean to the guest. And that's step 1. The step 2 is limitations of the menu. We've all gone through some limitations and cutback. And so how do you present variety with still limiting the number of items? And that's the second step in managing your menu. And then the third one is the creative part. And the creative part is in 2 parts, all beginning with the word packaging. We've seen a lot of creativity on packaging items. Packaging where we've combined different items to create new items or larger sizes, portions, limited daily specials to create interest on certain products during certain days. And then the next one is obviously we've increased our need for and our use of packaging. Many people through COVID tried to remenu items that displayed well and upgraded their packaging, the bags, the to-go utensils, a lot of creativity in how we packaged our food to display value and also to manage safety, convenience, and manage temperature. And then the 4th step is the actual layout. There are some things that we need to talk about on how to actually lay out, describe, and place menu items for best awareness. So those are the 4 steps. And as you can probably guess, these are the same 4 steps you would go through, whether or not you are a more limited menu or more high-end or more chef-driven menu. Remember I said menu is one area that seems to share commonality with all market segments. So to better define your menu or to reconfirm your core purpose, how do we do that? What exactly is that? Some of you probably have already done this, and maybe you didn't even know that that step was titled, but by studying your item sales reports, some POS systems call this the PMIX report, but by studying what the guests are ordering, you're listening to the customer. This is very important. You realize by what they're telling you, what your concept basically means to them, how you are representing. And sometimes it's a little different than what you thought. But this is where we learn the big lesson in menuing. And that is don't menu for yourself. You're the owner, you're the operator, which means you may have the final decision making. You're the ultimate responsibility. You're responsible for paying the bills, but don't think for a minute that that means you're the actual boss. Because the smart owner operators know that the boss is the customer. And when it comes to menuing, the smart play is play to your strength. Look at the trends, and the trends are being told to you every day about what the customers are ordering. So your item sales reports are very, very important. You can categorize those if you haven't already by category. If you want your daily item sales reports to be by lunch segment versus dinner, you can summarize them weekday to compare to weekend. You can categorize them by appetizer versus entree, sandwich salad section versus dessert. So I just think that this is valuable information that is needed to study anytime you assess your menu or want to improve your menu. Because if we don't start with the basics of who we are in the mind's eye of the consumer, then we're not properly defined and we might go off on a tangent. Okay. The next step in defining is taking a look at what those popular items are and where you see the trend is. You're more grilling. Your popularity seems to be there. Maybe your popularity is less in the frying. You seem to be selling a lot more in the entree category than you do in some of the other maybe incidental categories, sandwiches, soups. Maybe you're really lacking in your appetizer sales and you feel like maybe we should react and do something more creative there. These are all the kinds of things that you'll do by understanding your item sales reports and then by assessing the item cost. So to define our core, it's good to know what that core is costing us. This is getting a little easier to do now. Most independent operators can sit at least a couple times a year. I would prefer doing it seasonally and do an item cost so that you know exactly what each plate should be costing you. The reason it's getting a little bit easier is that you can track your recipes now. There's many different programs that break down your recipes, not just for training by portion and presentation and procedure, but then also can track by ounce. You can take those recipe programs to sit with your prime vendor. Most all prime vendors, whether you use Performance Food Group, Any Keith, Cisco, US Foods, they normally have a development department that will sit with you and take a look at based on the items they're selling you and the ounces and procedures that you're serving per item. They can help you estimate each item's cost. Now that's important, not just because of the cost percentage, but this is where we learn a lesson about the difference between gross margin and item cost. They're both important. Your item cost is important because you manage by cost percentages. And if you're really shooting for a 30, 31, 33% cost item, it's nice to know that your most popular items are either close to that percentage or under that percentage. That's good. But what I always like to tell people is that what you take to the bank is the gross margin. It's the dollars that pay the bills. It's the percentage cost that helps you just manage your menu item. So it's okay if you find that by your item sales reports, you're known as maybe a very good grill restaurant, but you're grilling really good fresh quality fish, maybe high cost steaks. And so your cost on those items are 36, maybe 40%. That's okay if they're priced right. Don't be scared because 60% of a higher price means more money to go through the P&L, pay the operating costs and have profit left over than say 67% of a lesser priced item. So when we're defining, that's what we're doing. We're looking at our sales, we're charting out our strength, we're following our trend, we're assessing our cost, and we're making our decisions based on the gross profit of the item. Now we're ready for step 2. How do we handle variety when we're also trying to be most efficient, manage kitchen labor, and utilize less product? Now, the whole reason this is important is that COVID taught us that we had to operate and very quickly operate with a severe cut to our labor. So most of you did some of the things that we talked about in our early sessions. You had to rethink your operation. You had to promote a lot more to go. You had to cut back. You had to furlough staff. And you had to come up with how am I still going to operate, but with fewer people. So we limited our menu. So I want to tell you that it's okay to stay with fewer items if you feel like they adequately display the purpose and the mission of your restaurant. Fewer items can still mean wide variety. And it's because in the mind's eye of the consumer, variety isn't defined by how many. variety is defined by how well your key items are presented, how uniquely you're handling your prime product. An example of that might be if you open up a menu of a casual restaurant and you always go there because you really enjoy this particular bacon, avocado, melted Monterey Jack grilled chicken sandwich. You might notice that they have 2 or maybe 3 chicken sandwiches, and that might be enough variety for them to answer the different styles of crunch, presentation, the fry versus grill, different toppings, and that would be enough. So why is it that you go to some other restaurant and they might have 8, 9, 10 choices for chicken sandwiches? They probably aren't selling any more dollars. They're just spreading their dollars over more items. There was a family chain, you probably know the name, Shoney's. Very popular in the Southeast. And I can remember years ago now, they commissioned a market research study. And I think it was because Perkins, another family-based restaurant chain, was moving into their area. And so they really wanted to have a very thorough market research study and focus group done to see what drives customers in that market segment. They thought that for sure they were going to score high in terms of variety because they had so many items. They not only had the breakfast buffet, but they had the breakfast items that were 24/7. They had lunch, they had grill, they had dinner, they had, they had a tremendously large menu. So imagine their surprise when they got back this tremendously detailed market study to find that actually they were edged out. And Perkins seemed to rate higher in the mind's eye of the consumer with regards to variety. They thought, how can that be? We got to have at least 20 or 30 more things in our categories than they do. So see what I'm saying? Look at your menu and say, if I only have 25, 30, or 35 items, can I have enough variety where I'm still touching all the bases? If I am a restaurant, for example, that seems to be popular with all types of proteins, can I still have a rotated fish special? Can I still use my chicken in sandwiches and pasta and on a main item and still have maybe a mixed grilled combination, still have some beef and maybe have a pork item, but not have so many different types? And the answer to that is yes. Some of the best known sit down full service restaurants do touch all the bases if that's what's important to them, but that doesn't mean they have more items. They just have very well-defined, very interesting items. So that means if you wanted to build more appetizer sales, I would say, let's study the appetizer category. Let's create really interesting appetizer items that play off the purpose of the menu and that utilize items that you might find in the main dishes or in the side items or salad items. So it shows continuity of purpose, and one section helps sell the other. That would be my recommendation. It wouldn't be just, well, let's go from 6 items to 12, because that might mean more sales. So variety doesn't mean more items. Variety does mean, however, well-planned, well-executed, and doing interesting things with all the different items. So while we're working on that, now that we've studied our PMIX reports, now that we know where our strength is, now we know that we really want to have enough variety, but not with many items. It might be good to see how we fit within some of the national trends. And the trends that came out of last year are sort of surprising. Well, maybe not so surprising. It's almost like in times of need or in times of stress, we want to run to mama and get a big hug. And that's kind of what we did with food trends last year, because the information that was made available last month shows that comfort foods were the winner in 2020. So it was like things like saucy, soupy, beef stew, pot roast, gravied items. Pork was the big winner. Pulled pork specifically was up 26% in 2020 over previous year. So it's almost like if you had something that seemed comforting and soothing, then you were in the most recent trend. Burgers and sandwiches obviously are popular, and they gained in popularity. They increased by 17% last year. And for those of you that are concerned with the trend of maybe more healthy eating, it would be good to know that plant-based foods were significantly up. Beet-based burgers were introduced. Vegetable burgers were up 15%. But before we go nuts with thinking, okay, trends are all healthy, let's know that not so fast, because sweets went out the window. The amount of cookies, the amount of desserts increased. Restaurants beginning to add donuts to their menu were up. Macaroons, for example, had a significant increase of 22%, but sweets and desserts as a category in whole were up 40% in 2020 over previous years. So let's not forget those. Now let's talk about how we can redefine some of your current items, because that was a big trend that came out of 2020. If you notice that you're very, very popular and it's maybe a relatively basic item, you're a burger place or a barbecue place, then let's not look any further to what was done over the past 12 to 18 months with the redefining of the chicken sandwich. That was the single greatest menu success story of the year. You can't watch TV without seeing a commercial now of everyone on the bandwagon. The Wendy's new and improved is better than the McDonald's new and improved, but the Burger King is out. We're all attacking, Popeyes. Well, go to this chicken place, go to that chicken place, because the chicken sandwich has been reinvented. Well, what that tells the consumer is that you can recreate interest out of increasing revenue and paying attention to improvement to your most basic item. Popeyes reported just last month that because of the successful chicken sandwich promotion, their average unit revenue increased $400,000. $400,000. That means before the successful relaunch of their new and improved chicken sandwich, their average unit was doing 1.4 million a year. The average Popeyes unit now does 1.8 million per year. So how does this equate to you? It may not be that particular item, but it might be time to say, let's reinvent or increase awareness of, because we want to repackage our long time, common, very popular player. I know restaurants that have been doing that now with other things, rethinking their key sandwich, reinventing their over-the-top burger. And it's to help fit in with the trend that people will get re-excited about something that is a basic item on your menu. So when you're taking a look at variety, don't forget about paying attention to your key item, recreating, improving. Okay, so let's talk about the next step. We understand variety. We understand where we are because we've redefined and we've updated our cost. So we're halfway through proper menu management. Now, step 3 is going to be packaging items. And we're going to talk about both ways of packaging. The first package is putting together food items in a way that helps drive home the message of your concept. Going back to the example that if you found in step 1 that it confirmed your thought that you were seen as maybe a seafood restaurant. Because of that, the idea of rotating seasonal freshness was important. And because of that, some of your seafood entrees, were the leading sellers. See, well then, if that was the case, I would say, how do we repackage that to create more interest and revenue by maybe having some seafood combinations, or maybe having some seafood that is popular but used in other manners into the appetizers or into a soup, or maybe used into a mixed grill or a combination plate, or just cooked differently. So now you've got the Friday fried whatever fish package. So working to your strength, you can package items. If you're that grilled restaurant, you might find that now's the time to take items that are in-house and find new ways of packaging them. Maybe it's a short rib that is a wonderful seller that you found in your item sales report. And you found that the gross margin of that product excites you. And so you not only want to keep that and promote that as an entree item, but maybe there's ways of taking that short rib and using it in other areas. Maybe we repackage that in a pasta. Maybe it also becomes an interesting short rib, something spiced, peppered nacho appetizer. So there's got to be some way of getting more bang out of the item that is already well accepted. A very common one is just mixing proteins. If you know that you're a grilled restaurant, then why not take items that are in-house and make creative mixed grills, where you have the smaller portion of the beef medallion with the chicken with something else, with maybe a couple different sauces. It's just a new and exciting way of offering things that are on the menu already, and they're on the menu already because they're the more popular items on your PMix report. So the constant here is we're playing to our strength, but we want to repackage interesting items to create more combinations, to use our core items in more interesting ways, because cross-utilizing product keeps inventory management easier to do, keeps the possibility of increased waste to a minimum, and yet still creates a new item. Sometimes these new items can carry a slightly higher price because of the way they're described, the way they're presented. And so now you've got a really good margin on an item that is, again, using items that work because they're in-house anyway and they play to your strength. Sometimes just repackaging them into something special on a daily special, maybe making a Sunday family night that features a larger portion of an item that's popular. So now it's more family style shared. It's a higher price, but it's a meal for two. And it comes with a couple of sides, but it's only for Sunday meal. Maybe that's one thing. Maybe you're repackaging some of your main items by rethinking kids menu. This works especially for some of you upper casual restaurants, or maybe your more chef-driven restaurants, where we can't just take a look at feeding children as an aside. And when you rethink menu, you don't ever want to look at the kids menu as, well, this is what's just popular for kids. If that was the case, we'd be still in the age of corn dogging and chicken nuggeting to death. But instead, if you take smaller portions of maybe the more non-spiced but regular items on the menu, but smaller portions, they can have a small quality pasta, or they can have a small quality beef item. They can have a mini portion of, say, of a meatloaf, perhaps. So some more successful menus are some that have continuity from appetizer all the way through incidentals like kids menu. So don't forget that, because what's important to the kids makes sense to them. It also makes sense to the parents. Some examples that I saw really work well through COVID were some companies that would do interesting menu meals. They took some of their items and packaged them into pickup meals only. So we know that the item was popular, but during COVID, we also know that dine-in was dramatically cut. So they made like meal kits. Local chefs came up with ways of take home and either thaw and bake or warm and serve items. We saw this with restaurants doing it with small pizza kits. We saw it with some casual restaurants doing taco kits. We saw more high-end restaurants doing it with their more meat, vegetables, or fish to take home. And this has led to some interesting packaging of items. So interesting that perhaps in your market, you've seen the same thing I've seen in mine. And that's where some of this packaging got picked up by grocery stores. HEB was probably the biggest player, where they reached out to some local restaurants in their major cities of Austin and San Antonio and Dallas and Houston, and would feature 5 or 6 different restaurants' food in their grab and go section. And they did this because it was a way of promoting a good community promotion. I think they got a lot of bang for the buck on that. And it really did help the restaurants complement some of the lost revenue. So this might lead to a whole new avenue in terms of menuing. Some items that you might find that could be packaged and sold. And why not? When you think of it, I know this kind of gets into the marketing type, but it's kind of hard to talk about menu without also putting your marketing hat on every once in a while. But think about that for a moment. What if there is an item on your menu that is popular, it drives home the purpose, it's got a good gross margin, and now that dine-in is coming back, why couldn't you do larger portions of that are available in the grab and go sector, the refrigerated display case that you've now added to the lobby host area? So people can say, hey, I liked it tonight. I could buy this small pan of lasagnas, tamales, my favorite enchiladas or whatever. And I can do that. I'm used to doing that. Grocery stores, I have been teaching people to do that. Take a look at the Krogers and the HEBs, Randalls, and wherever else that you might be wanting to shop. And you'll see how during COVID, they really, really expanded all of their pre-made menu items. And some of these are actually pretty darn good. They're priced right, they're packaged wonderfully. And so they're sending the message that a grocery store isn't just to shop for the cart, to plan meals, and to cook later. Grocery store should also be for while you're there, why not just pick up a couple of these really quickie salmon with asparagus or Parmesan green beans with a small steak or crab cake with a side of noodles and warm it up 10, 15 minutes, bingo, you've got a dinner. They're competing with restaurants on that. So why shouldn't we maybe compete with them? And some restaurants already have. I've seen people doing pizza kits. I've seen people doing frozen main dishes that you can take home. And I think that that's one really creative way of gaining back some lost revenue. So it's something to kind of think about. There is a interesting success story in Belton, Texas, a small diner type restaurant called La Luncheonette. What they did is they took some of their key items off their menu and said, we have smaller staff, we have lower revenue, we can't do the whole menu all the time. So they started driving certain sales for certain days. And it really worked well. Their Taco Tuesday, for example, worked really well. It wasn't on the regular menu for every day, but everyone knew, I'm gonna go get that big taco package. It's oversized, it feeds the family. And they do that. They did a way back Wednesday menu promotion, where it was every Wednesday, they might do something that was on their menu, their old diner favorites. I think they still did their Fish Basket Friday. So there are some other restaurants that took some of their key items and overportioned them. And the reason for that was so that even though they might have fewer orders, these orders were to serve 2 or to serve 4. So they got a higher price point. So it was certainly worth their while. And they found that most people were using curbside pickup or using takeout to feed more than one person. They also got comments that it was easier if people knew that, hey, we're going to share whatever, fried chicken Friday, or we're going to do this whole fish Friday, because it serves 2 people and it comes with sides, and it makes the ordering easier rather than, what is it you want? What is it that I want? Then we have to decide the restaurant. I might like that one item, but you don't necessarily like that item. It was much, much easier to repackage, up the portion, serve more people with one item. So these are some of the things that I see happening out of COVID that could perhaps stay as part of your menuing. I've been told by many operators that they've had such successful repackaging of menu items that now that dining is coming back, they may not ever be able to let go of what they thought was going to be a special limited time until we can get back to regular business kind of a promotion. But it's working so well that they're probably going to keep it. So that broadens now your menuing. And some of you might be in that position where you're thinking, as dine-in comes back, I would really like to have my full kitchen staff. I'd like to have my menu assessed, and I'd like to have my full story told on my menu. But in addition to that, I might have to keep the more limited or special daily or over-portioned family meals just for curbside pickup only. Because they were so popular, I don't want to let that go. And you're going to be in great company if you do that. Lastly, in the terms of packaging, what we saw that was successful was the idea of group packaging of items, not necessarily just your restaurant menu item that was ordered, but other items. Many restaurants, perhaps yours, during the beginning portions of COVID, those early months of say March, April, and May, seized the idea of becoming sort of a slash restaurant marketplace. And with all curbside pickup orders, people were available to get key items, bottled water maybe, or hand sanitizer. Maybe it was gloves, masks, paper towels, toilet tissue. There was tremendous success with that. I know some restaurants that use that as an interest, like a loss leader, With every order, you get sort of a surprise item that's an essential that you're having a hard time finding at the store. And it was hand sanitizer one week. It was maybe the bleach cleaners another week. Okay, so now months go by and those items are readily available. They're easier to get again. But some restaurants held on to the fact that we're going to continue repackaging our curbside pickup or takeout menu by adding other little incidental items, maybe small portions of items that we get from small local vendors that aren't on the market. Maybe it's a sauce, maybe it's a marinade, maybe it's Aunt Bee's honey from Sealy that you get for your lavender honey ice cream or something. But doing that little thank you in the package goes a long way. Daisy's Lunchbox is still doing that. It's a small bakery in a little city called Siri, Arkansas. They're doing that. Dish Society, a restaurant I know well, with 3 locations, I think in Houston, Texas, does that, where they offer unique sauces and spices and things that they get from their suppliers that aren't on the market that you can't get. Just a little point of difference. And because it works well and attracts attention to your curbside pickup or your third-party delivery menu, you may not want to drop it. Okay, let's spend a little bit of time on the last step now. If you're really following the menu process and you're playing to your strength and you stay current on your item sales and your item costing, and you've adjusted for some creativity with variety, and you're going to package some things differently or create some new packaged combos, now we've got to lay it out. So layout of the menu is extremely important to know from a customer's point of view, what seems to be working best. And we're going to go over those. There's the area placement. Where do I place it, for example? There is the item within the section that might mean something. There's the, how do I do font? How do I round my prices? Do I list a price column? And how do I describe items? These are all things that seem to change with consumers' buying habits. So I want to tell you right now, for those of you that might have the more common menu, where it's a full service restaurant and basically it's a menu that's given and you open it. That means you open it. It could be plastic with the paper menu inserted. It could be maybe a more formal situation where it's a nicer, heavy book, leather bound, that you open up with the paper inserts. Or it could just be the paper fold. But if it's a 2-page that you open up, it's good to know that the natural use of people's reading turns to their right first. So people go to their right, then they go up, and then they go over to the left. So that might be important to note if you're taking a look at your menu, you've never had it properly laid out before. And now based on your item sales reports, you know that you really sell a lot more of, say, grilled entrees. Well, then it might be really nice to know that our entree section maybe should be on the right side in the center. Maybe just above it should be the next popular item. Then we can go over to the soups, the salads, and maybe lower left are items that we still like. They're very important, but they're not the driving force of the concept. Does that make sense? Here, we'll give you an example. Let's say those of you that are out there are an Italian restaurant. But you're more of a slightly homemade, more expensive Italian grill. So you did learn that most of your entrees are what you sell a lot of. It's the way you do your Mediterranean topped olive oil fish, or it's the way you do your handmade pastas and with clams, or maybe it's the way you're treating lamb, veal, chicken, an Italian steak item. Basically, you're an Italian grill. So that means you probably have other Italian food on the menu. Maybe you still have a really great meatball sandwich. And maybe you still have a pizza oven and you serve small personal pizzas too. But if that's not the driving force of your concept, then your menu might need to be laid out where you open it up, and to the right in the middle are your grilled specialties. And maybe right above it are your pasta entrees. Then you can come on over to your soup, your salads, your appetizers, minestrone, etc., meatball sandwiches, and maybe the bottom left is your pizza section, because you like doing pizzas, but they represent a small section of your sales, and it isn't the driving force. Obviously, people can get pizza at pizza restaurants, And maybe you're really looked at, as we said, by your item sales report as the more expensive grill restaurant. So does that make sense? Now you're going to start thinking about your menu. Wow. Am I laying out my sections where people spend their most time? That's what's most important. Now let's talk about item placement within the area. Too many menus just list their items. I've even worked with some operators that were kind of concerned, and they thought I should list my items by price. So in my entrees, I start with the $10 to $12 items, and then I have my 14, my 18, and I end up with my $24 item. Okay. None of that really is as important to the consumer, because what we learn from the consumer is that people spend more time reading the top and the bottom listed item in every category than they do the items within the middle of the category. So let's think about that for a moment. If we really are, say, a casual, sit down, full service Mexican restaurant, we'll use this as an example now. And when you look at your item sales reports, you do serve a lot more of your combinations, your entrees, your platters, your grilled fajitas. You still serve some tamale plates, some combos, and some cheese enchiladas, but not many. Okay, so then that tells me where your enchilada section is going to be, probably bottom left. And it also probably tells me that your popular grilled combination entree plates on the right-hand side, top or middle, right? But within there, it probably tells me that if fajitas seem to set the tone for you, it's a top seller, it's got a good gross margin, and you want to promote it, well, then it maybe needs to be at the top of the section or the bottom of the section. It doesn't matter that the price might be high, down lower, up high again. That's not necessarily a way to locate items within an area. The way you want to locate items within an area is based on items that preach to your gospel, so to speak. They're telling your story. They're the more popular items. They're priced best, create the most profit. They need to be at the top and the bottom of every category. So think about that with your soups and your appetizers. Think about that as you're laying out every single category. If it's a casual restaurant with salads and you've got a really cool top of the line, fresh Mediterranean salad and it outsells the others, well, it should be at the top or the bottom of your salad list. So it gets more of the reading. Okay? How about describing the items? This is something that we used to have a lot of fun with, quite frankly, years ago, by telling stories. If you had a really interesting family recipe, you would say that, Aunt Rosa's famous tomato, onion, marinated, yada, yada, yada. Okay, well, guess what? The consumer is reacting much differently now. And you can maybe thank technology and the mind is moving quicker. People are making the decisions based on what is it, okay? Topped with what, served with what, for what price. So that's why you see now in the trends of menuing, most restaurants have very simple to the point descriptions. So if it is some type of a cheese topped chicken item, then you'll have the name, poblano chicken. And it's marinated poblano chicken breast topped with this cheese, served with this cilantro rice at this price. No more stories, no more flowery. It's more talk about the quality, give them the facts, and give them the value so we know what I'm getting for what price. Which leads me then to, after proper descriptions, how we should be pricing to fit in with today's consumer behavior. And the way we should be pricing is include the price with the description. We don't need a separate price column. There's more value given to the item if I'm reading about the roasted chicken and what it was topped with and what it is served with for this price. Continuity altogether. So it's a $16 item and it's part of the description. Now it can be a different font. Maybe it's separated by a few dots. Some people like to use a different color. I get it. But we don't need to do a different column. We don't want to attract attention to shop by price. Instead, we want to fit in with their pattern and put what we want them to read, where we know their eyes are going. And we want them to read who we are and how we cook and what is the price that is the right value for that item. So by placing that together, tells a better story and helps put attention on the item rather than, well, let me just take a look. I want to only look at something that costs 16 or less. Okay, then I'm just going to read those. They might be missing the point if they do that of the purpose of your concept, the style of your cooking, and they're not really getting the full effect of what the menu can do. Remember my initial concept that I stated today was that menus are more than just a list to be used to decide what I'm ordering and what I'm paying. It's the heart of your restaurant. It tells the story. It describes the style of service. Remember that. So if we misplace things and we don't allow people to follow their natural trends, they might not be getting the full story or the benefit of who we are. They might not be looking at our most popular items because we just made the price more paramount. So we don't necessarily have to have the price column. We also don't necessarily have to just have variety of prices because they make sense from a cost point of view. I don't think many people do that anymore, but every once in a while I will see an old-fashioned menu. And I know that when I see things like $16.39 or $17.45 or $13.27, so these oddball type prices, it tells me that they just took a look at what their cost was and they said, well, in order for me to run this cost, I need this price. The mind typically is rounding anyway. So there is really no difference between a 1639, 1640, and just be 1650. There's no difference between something that is 1372, 79, 1385, and just 1395. You know, we should either be at the half point or at the dollar point. Many people still prefer not to be at the dollar point. They'd like to be just that nickel under or a penny under. Okay, I yield to preference. But it's still in the mind might be a $14 item, even though you say $13.95. But we certainly don't need to go crazy with anything else because the people are rounding it anyway. And guess what? When you do that menuing, if you're busy, these extra 20 cents here, 31 cents here, 16 cents there add up. It adds up to maybe help cover the cost of items that from time to time happen, like increase in paper cost or the extra, I don't know, dumpster pickup that you needed to do. And these extra expenses that come up from time to time, you can't raise your prices all the time to cover them. So having that little bit of a gap really, really helps. So we talked about area placement, item placement. We talked about item descriptions, proper pricing. Another thing about proper pricing is don't forget to do market comparison when you do your menu reviews on all items. Now, why do I stress all items? Because too many times I've worked with people that know a lot about their item cost. They know a lot about how they compare on main things. If I'm a Mexican restaurant, I might know an awful lot about how my fajitas compare to others, how my combination plate compares to others. But I might not really dwell on the fact that I'm leaving money on the table in some other, what we call incidental categories that are very, very popular. Like, for example, non-alcoholic beverages. If you find in the market area that people are charging, say, $3 for the soft drinks, why are you still charging $2.75 for your Diet Coke or your iced tea? I realize it's not from a cost point of view, but you don't want to just list your prices based on cost. Remember, cost is good to manage by. Gross profit, however, is what pays the bills. So if we can increase gross profit in areas that the market will allow, then we need to do that. So you always want to compare your prices to the market. And don't forget the little things. Desserts are another one. Cups of coffee and sodas and tea. Those are the key areas where if you look at your item sales report, you'll see that you sell a ton of those. In fact, I don't care how popular a Mexican restaurant's fajitas are, they're probably selling more Diet Coke and iced tea than beef or chicken fajitas. So if you can get that extra, whatever, nickel, dime, or quarter on something that you sell so much of, be sure to do it. Okay, before we leave layout, we should also talk about the use of things like font, color, shading, boxing, pictures. Very important to use, but you don't need to use them all. People do not react well anymore to what we call menu clutter. So if you're going to have one or two well-placed photos, that's good. If you feel like you need a picture for every single item, it's not helping, it's confusing. If you feel like you're going to have some pictures, but also some color and change of font, and some bold and some boxing and some shading, I would say pick one or the other, because a simple, easy to read menu gets more attention. So boxing popular items is a very good idea. Putting maybe a shade under your more popular section, very good idea. Just select the one or two menu practices that work for you. Don't do it all. Menus that try to do everything that some people might say work are adding confusion, not necessarily increasing understanding to the customer, not necessarily raising revenue. So where will your menu take you? Follow these 4 steps and try to do this at least a couple times a year. And it may take you to increased revenue, better cost management. It's going to take you perhaps into a different area of sales, increased curbside pickup because of your daily specials or your meal packaging, your overportioning. It may even take you into retail, like you'll find where retail stores have picked up things. I still look at Catfish Parlor in Austin, Texas, for example, when I guess it was at least 10 years ago, they started jarring their jalapeno tartar sauce. And I love it when I stumble onto it sometimes in stores, markets, websites. I think it's still sold in a lot of the Buc-ee's. That just came out of customers' requests because they liked the jalapeno tartar sauce. And if you talk to the guys there, they would tell you that they were just responding to following the consumer trend. They used to just pour it into a small little styrofoam cup and give it to people. Then they started having it available for sales. And when they looked at their item sales report and they saw how popular it was, that's when they said, wow, we might be able to add value to our brand by selling things in retail. Your menu may take you to something like that. It might take you into a large portion take home, heat and serve, thaw and bake kind of a product line in addition to your routine menu. So in summary, I say, let's do our reviews regularly. Let's do all 4 steps. Remember that your menu is the heartbeat. It's telling the story. So it's more important than just hanging on a wall and letting people order from. So best of luck, happy menuing. I don't know, hello, do we have time maybe to answer a question or two?
Yes. My internet's not working that well, so I can't pull up the survey, but I'll be sure to send it in a follow-up email along with Chris's contact information. So right now we want to open it up for questions. If it is a little bit easier for you, you're more than welcome to take yourself off of mute to ask your question. In the meantime, if we don't have any questions, when I send that follow-up email and you maybe think of something that you would like to ask Chris, you're more than welcome to either send Chris an email or send me an email and I'll be sure to get it to him. Again, if you are not an SBDC client, please sign up for one because we will be having Chris on as a consultant to help small businesses in relation to the restaurant hospitality industry. Okay, and with that, I want to thank you. This kind of completes our series of the restaurant hospitality. And again, I appreciate Chris for taking the time out to conduct this with us and all the valuable information that you've been able to provide.
My pleasure. I enjoy this. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great week, everybody.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry, you're closing out. I just wanted to, and sorry for the noise in the background, the kids. I just wanted to just get some insight on a carryout menu. You mentioned the two-fold menu, but what would you suggest as far as like a carryout style menu?
The takeout pickup menu. I think that it might need to be consistent with whatever you're also listing on the website for online ordering, for your curbside pickup. So if it's different than your regular menu, it's probably because it's more limited. And I think that's working really well now. So for a carryout menu to be a little more limited, but as long as it touches on what's most popular for takeout. I also think a carryout menu is an excellent opportunity for packaging. combining, making larger portions, maybe making family packs. So if you took one of your more popular dinner items, for example, and said available on carryout in a larger portion, slightly higher price, and it feeds two, I think that would be a great trend. It's an opportunity to not just be the same menu as dine in, because most restaurants have increased their sales by having it be a little different.
Thank you.
Awesome. Great question, Lyndon. Thank you so much. If there are no more questions, we are going ahead and close it up for the day. Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a rest of your week. Have a great rest of your week. Thank you. Bye, Chris.
Thank you. Bye-bye.